Creating from the Heart, Suzy Vance, The Artistry of Living. And I'm here with Connie and George Kassal today. They are husband and wife, but they are also artists. Definitely artists of life, I'm sure. Connie, we're sitting in the middle of your studio, which is drop dead gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
I love what I'm seeing all around.
Well, my artwork was so terribly influenced by a couple of odd experiences that I had when I was about 9 years old. And you remember I grew up on a farm, northern Illinois, kind of conservative, you know. And I was on the back lane just taking a walk, and I popped out of my body and was looking down at myself. And I told my mother about it, and she didn't say too much. She probably
thought you were
was a little concerned about me. And I had nowhere to put that. So I just kind of smashed it back down into my consciousness. And it wasn't until many years later I realized that convinced me that I exist beyond my physical body.
There you go.
Yeah. And then in 2004, I died during surgery because I bled out. And I had a beautiful, beautiful out-of-body experience then. You know, so that convinced me also. So those
George, you're still married to her?
53 years?
So that experience and that belief keeps, shoving its way forward into my artwork. So, for instance, the one behind us, it has the cranes. And the pre-Columbian people thought that water birds were sacred because they could exist up in the air, they could exist on the physical plane, and they could exist underwater. So it's kind of a representation of spirit. So I kind of adopted that as a symbol for me. And then I tend to paint them like that one is going through time, and this one over here is also going through time, going through experiences. And then this one over here of the trees is a kind of raw winter expressive painting. And I think that's me in the winter of my life because I'm 75 now. So
it happens to all of us.
I know. This one is the most recent one that I painted, and I have no idea what that one means because it's art speaks from the soul, and it's coming from the subconscious and trying to talk to us and tell us what we really know, what we really think, how we really feel.
Right.
And sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's the next day after I paint something that I realize what I'm telling myself.
Isn't that wonderful to have that way of talking to yourself?
So you don't need a therapist.
No, you don't. You really don't. If you listen to yourself.
Yes.
That's what the one piece that I did called Pearls of Wisdom was. It was listen to yourself when you talk.
Yeah.
Because,
Well, in my color scheme, before, when I was adult, not when I was a child, but as an adult, my color scheme was always in the blues and the greens. And it was all about how spirit fit into the body. I kept trying to figure out the mechanics of were they little molecules bumping into each other. One was physical and one was spiritual, how it was going on. And then after I had that near-death experience, it just automatically changed to very bright, warm colors. Now it's kind of settled back into somewhere in between. So they must have retained a balance now again.
Well, and colors heal.
Yeah.
Good for you. Have you always been an artist?
I think so.
A painter?
Now, my mother was interested in art and did some sculpture, so she was very supportive of that. My sister can draw, and I can remember when I was 5 years old, and my sister drew a picture of horses, and I copied my sister's picture. I drew it too. And my mom said, and I feel sorry for my sister, my mom said, Connie can draw better than Betty Ann.
Oops.
And I'm like, hooked. All right, that's it, because you like that.
Yes, you do.
And when I was a kid, all the time I was growing up, there was a favorite chair that my sister and I fought over in the front room. It was a rocking chair. And if I got it, then I drew all night long on typing paper, and it was spread out in like a white skirt around the chair. And at the end of the night, I'd gather it up and throw it away. And it was always figurative, and it was often stories. And a lot of my artwork is kind of narrative too.
Uh-huh.
And this little zine is a story.
Let's see the zine.
I took a personality test once that told me I was a writer.
The silver bullet rides again.
That was an adventure we had on a Christmas Eve where we got stuck and ran out of gas, and we had all these terrible experiences. 83 degrees below zero wind chill was terrible. So, but we made it.
Very good.
We lived.
My brother came and rescued us. At one point, the car would only run backwards.
Oh my
The
God.
transmission.
Where were you?
We were out
Sycamore, Illinois.
sort of by Sycamore, north of DeKalb in that area, and the transmission linkage had frozen, so it wouldn't shift
Because we've been going through drifts, and
And it would only go backwards.
for a while. Then we got that fixed, and then it would only be at a low, so it went really slow, but
Oh,
we
my.
could make progress.
my brother came down and he had a 4-wheel drive vehicle, so he drove ahead of us and broke the snow for us. And then if we ran out of gas because we were getting close, we could ride with him, so we didn't have to worry anymore. And when we got to my folks' house, he pulled the car in the garage and it ran out of gas. So we just made it.
So here you are creating with those memories. That's fabulous.
Right. So I'm
That's
pursuing
really good.
the writing a little bit more than I used to. I was in a writer's group for a while, but it's gotten difficult for me to travel over there and get back again. So I haven't been going to that. But my neighbor is a very good children's book author, and so I sometimes send things to her
Oh,
to
that's
see.
good.
So I've been writing up my autobiography. It's like 38 pages long.
Oh, good. You're getting there. That's good.
Well, it's about growing up on a farm in the 1950s, and how that affects you, and a lot about that life doesn't exist anymore.
And that people don't know about and
Yeah.
need to know about.
Yeah.
Especially younger people.
Yeah, my
'Cause who
grandkids
knows?
say,
And we may end up on the farm again.
Yeah.
Who knows the way things are going.
we bought the farm.
So, George, you're not a painter.
No, I'm not, and my story is not nearly as dramatic as Connie.
You mean you didn't have a past life experience that got you into
Not
photography?
quite the same. No, I was given a camera as a present when I was
You
about
were?
8 or 10,
Really?
and it got me kind of hooked on it. I was an only child. I lived a lot in my own head, in my own experiences, and the camera became part of my life from then on. I mean, I was interested in other things too. I was very interested in science, and actually spent over 20 years as a geologist, and then
That would take you into...
yeah, and then later as
He has a
an
degree in
IT
that.
person. But at some point, we both went back. We met in college.
Did you?
We met in the dark
We
room.
met in the dark room. Yes. Connie was an AV
That's fudging it
artist,
a little bit. isn't it?
and I got a job as a photographer with AV department.
They don't even have AV departments
No,
anymore.
I don't call it that anymore. But Connie was my boss.
Whoa!
Yeah, so-
You did anything she wanted you to
That's
do,
right.
right?
Still do. Try anyway. Yeah. So then I was doing photography of, like photojournalism kind of things in schools, technical journals, yearbooks, newspapers, all that kind of stuff. And then in my job. But then at some point, when our youngest went off to college, we kind of decided, well, maybe we'll go back to school too. Now, Connie's degree was in art, in painting, and
Right.
mine was in geology, but we went back and both got a degree and a master's in art, with Connie specializing in painting and me in photography. And then since then, I've been more active in the arts community and exhibiting and things like that.
Right.
And the nice thing about that is that once you've got that master's degree, you can teach at the college level.
Mm-hmm.
So I taught for about 10 years at Prairie State and 10 years at Purdue North Central then. And
Yeah.
George has been
Back in about 2003, 2004, Connie was teaching a art appreciation class over there, and she started having these problems with her back and couldn't continue teaching, so I took over the class. So I've been teaching at Prairie State as an adjunct, part-time.
Right.
Teaching art appreciation, art history, history of photography now quite a bit ever since, and then also occasionally at Purdue. Photography and art appreciation.
That's fabulous.
So it keeps me involved, keeps the mind going.
Yes, and it keeps the students curious about life.
Yeah, yeah, and you can bring your experiences to them.
Uh-huh.
You know, the staff or the chairman of the department likes to have, at least the Prairie State, likes to have artists who are, teachers who are also artists, working
Right.
artists, and can speak about it from experience. So that has helped us a lot, helped the students a lot, think a lot about a more rich experience to them so that they can learn firsthand about things.
And
So
they can
what-
learn how to manage art in their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you take photographs of when you were a kid, when you got the camera, as opposed to what you take photographs of now?
Well, I think it's always been exploring the world around me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in school, especially grade school, you know, other than things around the house and the neighborhood and whatever, it was like school trips and going to parks and trips with my parents and, you know, holiday events and things like that. It was just recording my life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, it was more photojournalism where I had to cover other events, you know, and then, but since graduate school, it's been more still exploring the world around me,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe from a little different perspective. I also take kind of a spiritual approach to things, not nearly as much as Connie, probably.
I'd say a little rubbed off.
But a little rubbed off, I guess. So I often look for the spiritual in nature.
Mm-hmm.
But also recently I've gotten involved or interested in man's influence on the environment.
Ooh, that's timely.
We live here in the dunes in a beautiful area. There's parks around here, so I like taking pictures there. But I found it more and more difficult to get a picture of the landscape without having evidence of man in it. You know, there'd be a telephone pole there. Okay,
Yes.
so you got to move, get that out of there. Well, all of a sudden I decided, you know what, I'm going to leave it in there because that's part of the environment now. Man has changed things. So then I look at other things. I go for a walk and I see all these signs and restricting access, you know, private beaches, construction going on, and, you know, one thing after another, high power lines and things like that. So I started just incorporating that, and that led to this, which is a recent project.
Let me see. Oh, the
Now, there's
man-altered landscape.
I got interested in a photographer from the 70s. Everybody's heard of Ansel Adams.
Yes.
Well, this is Robert Adams, no relation. He was actually, I think, a literature or English professor in college, and he switched over to photography. And he got interested in this in Colorado and started a whole movement called the New Topographics Movement. And there's been a lot of exhibits and everything going on in that genre. And I got interested in it and started following it. So that's what I'm trying to do, among other things.
That's fabulous.
Some of my work has been pure landscape things. I had a recent exhibit at Lebesnick in fall called Radiant.
Yes.
And it was, I think maybe you were there, and it was about that radiant aspect that I see in the landscape around here. But then this is another offshoot of that. So it's both varieties of the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's an exhibit coming up in Chesterton.
Yes.
Mark my words.
Mark my words. And both of our zines will be in that.
Good.
So if anybody wants to see that, that's in October, I think. I forget the dates. I think it's October, November.
It's
something
October
like
and November, yeah. I forget exactly what
So,
date it opens. And
I've been involved, or we were involved in the zine fests here in
Right.
Lebesnick for several years, and then that all got set aside because of the pandemic. And now that Hannah has moved over to Chesterton, that was her
that went with
baby.
her.
She started something over there, so we're gonna be
That's
involved
great.
with that.
We had a guy come up to us at that zine fest, and he said, he leaned down and he says, you know, you and your husband too have so much light in your artwork compared to everyone else there, because a lot of other people had
Oh, I saw. Right.
cartoons and stuff, but they're
Dark and heavy.
Yeah, dark
Yeah.
and scary and violent and
The dark side.
yeah.
And even in these kind of things here, I mean, there's a certain beauty involved in that.
Yeah.
It's not I'm not necessarily taking a political statement saying this is bad or this is good. I'm just saying that's
Oh,
what it is.
here it is.
Here it is.
Look at this.
And you've got to learn to recognize that it's now part of the environment. The things that we used to see as common landscapes are different now.
Yes.
Because they have all this expansion.
Decoration.
And urbanization and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. And not that that's necessarily bad, it's just now it's different.
It's different.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both very much for allowing me to interview
Well, we
you.
appreciate very much that you asked us and came, and
It's been good.
thank you so much.
You're
It was
welcome.
fun.
Creating from the Heart, the Artistry of Living with George and Connie Kassal. See you next time.